Joining us now, we call him the chairman of the board, Tony Sayegh. He's communications director for the Department of Treasury, Steve Mnuchin, and all that good stuff. He's got a fancy title like public affairs something or other, but basically he's the comms guy. But he knows what's going on, and we love having him on because he's my friend, and he's cool, and he's smart. Tony Sayegh, good to have you with us, man.
John, great to be with you and your listeners. And friend of John is a title I like to maybe lead with this morning. So thanks for having me.
You're an FOJ, friend of John, very elite club. And I'm very loyal to my friends, as you know. As you know, I take a bullet for them, but it's a very elite club.
I appreciate the fact that you got my mother's talking points about the comms director job. You were on message. Thank you. My mother thanks you very much.
I talk to your mom every day. Smart lady. But we got you as the bet. You're about 5-1, right? There's a lot of other names in there, but you're my bet, and I think if they take a serious look at it, you're going to be in the job. And then when you come on, you'll be able to come on as the comms director for the White House. Meantime, though, you're doing a fabulous job. Now, I got to talk about these tax cuts because I'm pumped about these tax cuts. And, Tony, look at the economy. I mean, the growth. And the thing is, I was saying this yesterday. I just want your quick take on it, and I'm going to give you the floor. One of the most unmentioned things about this economy is the number of new workers entering the job market, people that had dropped out in 2007, 2008, and 2009, haven't even looked for a job. They're getting back in. Here's what that means. As you keep adding jobs and the unemployment rate stays the same, it means that new workers are going into the system. And that means a new tax base. That means new companies, new jobs. And I think that's the untold story about the Trump economy. What say you?
Listen, and I also would add to that the fact that you've had significant wage growth for the first time in over a decade. 2.3% last month, up in wages. One of the reasons I think President Trump was so effective in discussing the economy during the campaign was that he understood that most Americans were not experiencing their economic opportunities and destinies the way they should. Their wages were flat, their expenses were up, their taxes were up. They had a government in Washington that were not pushing forward policies that were growing the economy, making their paychecks bigger. And now we are. And the fact that you have significant wage growth, to your point, economic growth, we had revised numbers last quarter, pushing it closer to 3% economic growth. You know the difference between 2% economic growth and 3% is trillions of dollars to the economy. And that's something that is very important. We haven't seen in nearly 8 years of a wasted near decade of growth. And when you talk about jobs, and you nailed it on this one, 2.5 million have been created since President Trump took office. And importantly, in sectors that needed to have a boost, 277,000 construction jobs, 263,000 manufacturing jobs. Indexes of optimism in the manufacturing sector and consumers across so many sectors is at record highs. That's because we finally have policies on the tax side with the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act, on the regulatory side with all the rollbacks of just severely critical and brutal regulations being rolled back, and that's stimulating a lot of the economic activity. And growth is opportunity. And when we talk about economic growth, we've got to be careful not to sound like economists. When the economy grows, more people get to take a part of it. More people get to benefit from it. And that's the exact idea that the president really is focused on with his economic policies.
Well, the other factor of this, Tony, is when you look at the deficits, and a lot of the Democrats now obviously had no problem with doubling and tripling the debt when Obama was president. Now all of a sudden they become deficit hawks when this happens. But if you look at the debt and the deficit that they say is going to grow because of the tax cuts, they're looking at a static economy, right? If you get growth at 3.5% or 4% and you keep adding jobs and you take people that are not working and now all of a sudden they are working, that means they're paying taxes. They're in the system. They're opening up companies. They're paying taxes. People are buying things. They're paying taxes. So as that goes, you're going to get more revenue in. It's like when the Hoffer curve back in the Jack Kemp curve back in the 80s when he said you cut taxes, revenue is going to go up. So we can get revenue increases that can cut the debt in half if you can get 3% growth, and nobody's even factoring that in.
Look, you're exactly right. And, obviously I was a young staffer for Jack Kemp when he ran for vice president. I love it when he used to say the rising tide lifts all boats. He was talking about economic growth and how much activity comes with that and how everybody benefits when the economy is growing. You know who else believed that, John? John F. Kennedy. I mean, when you think about cutting taxes as smart economic policy, it's actually a bipartisan best practice. John Kennedy slashed the top marginal rates in the 60s. He had one of the biggest booming economies in our history. Ronald Reagan did it. We know the result. We had near 5% economic growth during parts of the Reagan era. You had Bill Clinton, who cut taxes, cut the capital gains taxes on investment, because he even understood when you want more of something, you reduce the tax on it. And then George W. Bush had a tax cut that was helpful. But this is the first meaningful broad tax reform in 31 years, and you're already seeing the good types of effects that come with this type of smart policy. And you cannot deal with the debt and deficit when you're growing this economy, the American economy, around 2%. You just can't. You need to make sure you make policies that increase the growth rate, which increases, as you correctly point out, government revenue. We have more government revenue every time we cut taxes because you broaden the base of the economy and you collect more from that economy. And that's a simple fact through history if you really review the positive stimulative effects of cutting taxes and getting growth and revenue.
Oh, you're so right. And that's why the Democrats have been lying to you about these tax cuts. Tony, they've been lying to the American people for 6 months now. They're going to continue to lie and deny and try to run out the clock in November. But with all this great economic news, the tax cuts haven't even hit, except for you have a lower withholding in your paycheck. You're not getting the benefit of it. You're not going to really see that until you get into the first quarter of 2019. Because it takes effect in 18. So that's when people are going to be they're going to be paying, if they make a little bit more money, but they're going to be paying, $2,000, $3,000, $4,000, $5,000, $6,000, $7,000 in less taxes. Businesses are going to be paying tens of thousands of dollars in less taxes. Well, what are they going to do with that money? What are small businesses going to do? Well, they're going to do what I do. They're going to take it and they're going to invest in their growth. They're going to hire people. They're going to keep creating jobs. That hasn't even happened yet. Think about that.
John, you talk about what are they going to do with the money. It's a very important question. Ernst & Young, very objective accounting firm, did a survey last month. 89% of businesses said they were going to increase worker compensation due to the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act. 66% of businesses said they were going to give back to their customers some sort of savings as a result of the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act. We knew what businesses would do. You already have over 500 companies giving millions of American workers bonuses, wage increases, raising their contributions to their 401k programs, raising their contributions to their health care programs, and reinvesting into their companies to the tunes of billions of dollars. I mean, the announcements from Apple and others to show the significance of what we were trying to do by getting American companies to reinvest into the domestic economy, and they're stepping up. So you're right. The withholdings, which we encourage everybody to go and fix your withholdings, refile your W-4 if you have to with your employer, because that's very important to make sure that your biweekly or monthly paychecks reflect accurately the withholdings, so you can take more pay home and get your paycheck up there. But the American family, when this is fully implemented, could possibly see anywhere from our Council of Economic Advisors in their paycheck increase of anywhere between $4,000 and $9,000. That's significant money. We know at the end of this year, the average family of four making $75,000 is going to get an average tax cut of $2,100. That's not crumbs, my friend. That's meaningful money to many people in this country. And it's amazing that not one Democrat, not one, voted to make the middle-income tax cuts permanent, voted to make our business taxes more competitive, and not one Democrat voted to make the small business tax rate the lowest it's been in nearly 70 years. Not one.
Well, not only not one voted for it, now they want to run on a platform of repealing it and raising it. That's just mind-boggling to me. And, there's some Democrats out there, Tony, I believe, that hate Trump more than they love America. And I think that's a real problem because, I don't tend to be that partisan. I mean, I talk to Democrats all the time. I get them on my show all the time. I'm not a hater, and a lot of them are good people. And, some things I agree, sometimes I don't. But there's many of them are just blinded by this hatred for this president. I mean, they don't care what he does. They just hate him. And it's a very dangerous path they're going down. And, if I was running Nancy Pelosi's operation right now, I would be absolutely beside myself on this week they had. I mean, all they have to do is say nothing, and they're probably going to win. And instead, Steny Hoyer starts it off in Maryland by going out and saying, yeah, if we get in, we're going to repeal the tax cut and impeach the president. Doesn't matter what the charges are. I mean, Steny Hoyer said that, second in command. It's like they can't help themselves, right? It's crazy.
And I remember a day in Washington where Steny Hoyer was one of the reasonable Democrats.
Yeah.
To show you how far they've all gone. Because
yes,
that's where their party has gone. There was an era where Democrats were working with Republicans to cut taxes, and it wasn't that long ago. The 1990s was, about 20 years ago. So that was because people fundamentally, regardless of their partisan view, fundamentally understood what good economic policy was about. And when you reduce tax on something, you increase its access, its availability, its production. And that's why, look, we could disagree about how much to cut taxes by, where to focus the emphasis of our tax cuts. But to disagree that giving the American people more of their hard-earned money back, giving businesses competitive rates so they can create jobs and raise wages, we can't disagree about those. These are fundamentally smart policies that Democrats, because of their just animus toward the president, and frankly toward, I would say, a lot of the policies that they know would change the order of Washington and not give government more control. It just can't seem to reason and work with us on some of this stuff. So it's very disappointing.
Well, spot on. We're out of time. I want to thank Tony Sayegh for being with us. He's the communications director for the Department of Treasury, and our Treasury Secretary, Steve Mnuchin, who's doing a great job. And we're starting a draft Tony Sayegh for White House Communications Director. We're drafting Tony K. Hey, if you want Tony in the White House as communications director, he's not lobbying for it. I am. This isn't him. Tweet him at Tony4NY. Besides, he's a New Yorker. I mean, this is a perfect storm. He's from New York, right? Just like me. Tony4, the number 4, NY, at Tony4NY. Tony, thanks for being with us, although I do hate the Mets, and I hate the Yankees as well. I'm an Astro fan.
Come on, Tidewater Tides, man.
Oh, for God's sake.
Thanks,
John Frederick, the Tidewater Tides. Yeah, whatever, Tony. Tony Sayegh. Follow him on Twitter at Tony4NY. I think. Are you a Mets fan?
Yes, I am.
They're winning.
Miserably so, but we're doing all right this season.
Yeah, this season they're doing good. Mets, Astros. That's what we're hoping for in the next World Series. I got to go.